let's talk about the 1980 Daytona 500, the Gray Ghost. This is my favorite paint scheme of all time. I've actually ran the Gray Ghost in some throwback races a few times now. I've ran it as many times as they let me. And so I just believe it's a beautiful combination, color combination, good-looking race car, and, of course, it was maybe the fastest car I've ever heard about on a racetrack. Dominated. You had to put day-glow duct tape on the front or decal on the front just because it would run up on the rest of the competition so fast they couldn't see it coming because it blended into
afraid they don't run over them.
Yeah. So what was unique about that car? What made the Gray Ghost so much better than everyone else out there? I want to say in 1980, the Daytona 500, 8 of the top 10 starters had Oldsmobiles.
Right.
Everybody had the same parts and pieces. What were you doing to make your car so fast?
There's a lot of things I done. I still to this day can't understand why they couldn't pick up on it, just like that carburetor.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a simple fix for that carburetor.
Yep.
But anyway, we're at the shop, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do to get that car? We got to go to Daytona. We got to be the best. And I took it. I didn't have no body man, so I took it to the guy that used to work at Home and Moody, and I put a long template on it. Now that's another trick I had that nobody picked up on. That long template was where the cow pressure was at.
Yep.
And I told him, I said, that long template's got to fit like a glove. And then I'd pull strings down the side of it. Now this is what I want. I don't want no big bubbles on the fenders. And
You wanted to, so the front fenders, they would roll and beat those things out with a ball peen hammer and a body hammer and make these big bubbles to be able to have clearance. But that was detrimental to drag and all of the other things that you're trying to fight.
Yeah, that's the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, that would slow the car down. So you're taking all of that out. Everybody else is bringing that to the racetrack thinking they're doing the right thing, right? So they don't want no tire rubs. They got clearance. But you're streamlining the side of your car. When you look at pictures of this car at Daytona, at Talladega in 1979, 1980, you could see how much straighter and flatter the top, the 12 o'clock on your right front fender or your left front fender, how much flatter and smoother it is than a lot of the other cars you're competing against.
But I know going back and forth at lunchtime, I'd go over and check on it, and I'd pull the strings down, and they said, "Don't want them on, cut it off." And I wore them out working on that race car.
Yeah.
Because I wanted it one way and not another way.
Yeah.
So finally, I got the thing, and I took it to the shop. Then we assembled it, put it together, and 2 days later, I get a bill. $10,000 bill for that car.
Yeah.
I'm still mad at myself for paying it. But anyway, I said, well, that'll get me fired. So we go to Daytona, and we unload the old race car, and she was fast. And like you say, it was so fast, it was running up on people, and they wanted to paint the front of it day-glow and quit scaring everybody.
Yeah.
But I remember it was the blackest black I could come up with, and the silver on it was a 66 Corvette. And then we put the stripes down the side, orange and yellow and red, and that really set it off. Those Mobile people took a fit over that car.
Why?
It doesn't see nothing like it looked at.
They liked
it. But anyway, I'll never forget, the car was very fast during practice and all. And Sunday morning before the 500, Dick Beatty was in charge of the garage, and he paged me to the office. I said, what have I done now? Because Bill France, I'd come in of a morning, and he'd come over to me, and he'd say, Waddell, you're stinking up the show. I said, Billy, I'm not doing anything wrong. I could tell every night they had to cover off that race car.
That's what I wanted to ask you. You say in a lot of interviews that you put the cover on the car a specific way, and you could tell the next morning it was different.
We'd mark it.
So what were you how were you marking it?
Well, just different ways,
But you knew NASCAR was looking at your car.
Oh, yeah.
And at night, when y'all leave the garage and garage closed, you go back to the hotel, you knew NASCAR was taking a look.
Oh, yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah.
A funny thing.
That was probably common back then? Not a big deal?
Well, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you ain't cheating, you got nothing to worry about, right?
Right, that's it. I wasn't doing nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dick Beatty would come in, and they'd run everybody out of the little garages in. He said, sit down over there. I want to tell you something. He said, ain't nobody here wants to run against that race car today. I said, Dick, there is nothing wrong with that race car. It's as legal as they can be. He said, yeah, it's illegal. I wish everybody go through inspection with you and just see how legal it was. No, I don't want them to see. Because they're pulling the front ends down, and that's killing the cow pressure. If you put it back up there, and then when it comes back on around, the cow pressure is up. It's unbelievable how much you could get out of it. And I remember having 80 square jets in that carburetor, which is pretty unusual. But all 8 spark plugs looked the same in that car.
Yeah.
So
people were pulling the noses down.
It just killed, and I remember watching some of them go through inspection. They'd push on the template and everything to try to get it. It's a 2-inch block. I think they had you had to clear.
Yeah,
but then that one, the template laid right on top of it.
So the cow pressure is, you mentioned the cow pressure, and when the Bud guys were really successful with the Bud car, we won all those races at Daytona and Talladega with myself and Michael. The speed was getting everything into the carburetor and through the intake as good as fast as possible, right? Putting as much air in there and fuel air in there as you can, and that starts in the cowl. All right, and so that the shape of the cowl and how the cowl interacts with the airbox. And then how the airbox allows,
right?
How can you make that air convenient as possible to get into that carburetor? So we had a single individual that would come to our tests that worked on nothing but cows all winter. He built cows, cow after cow after cow, and we'd go to Daytona in 2002, 2003, and go through 15 cows during 3 days of testing. You needed it every day, because you were going to try everything you could. You had 15 different cows, and then each of those cows would have 3 or 4 different types of guts, And so, and that's where you found the cow that was going to lead the best, the cow that was going to run the best in the draft, and then how do you take the best of those two worlds and merge them together for the best cow you could possibly have. And so that's honestly one of the biggest secrets, I think, that gave us a bunch of success. And you picked up on that way back in 1980, or I'm sure before that even.
Oh,
but
yeah,
that was
before
something.
that.
Yeah, that was something.
See, at home with me, we were making those, stamping out those air cleaners.
Yeah.
And there was 2 different ones of them. And I was in the middle of working on them and perfecting them. And I had a jump on everybody as far as those cow pieces.
Yeah.
And
so what was... So outside of trying to get the nose down, if you held it, so you're telling me keeping the hood flat, right? Is that right?
Yeah, you don't want to raise it up as much as you can that the temperature will let you.
Yep.
And then when you raise it up, that lets more cow pressure go in.
Okay.
It's big how much it help.
Yeah. And so just that the one thing though, the one thing when I think about the 1980 Daytona 500 is that I think about 79. You had the same car, you had the same speed in 79, and they had that rain delay that hurt a lot of guys. Fouled some plugs. Daryl's car had some issues all day long. But y'all end up breaking 40-some laps into the Daytona 500, and everybody said that the Gray Ghost was the strongest car back in 79. I remember Buddy getting out and being so dejected.
Oh, yeah.
So disappointed. And so when he's out there racing that car during the 1980 Daytona 500, how much pressure was on you? Or how nervous were you? You talk about being nervous in that 1979 Daytona 500 about that $200 motor staying together. What was the pressure like for you as you're getting toward the end of that Daytona 500 in 1980? Everything's gone right. You've won everything. The car is second to none. There's not even anything close to it in speed, and Baker's out there leading the race and in command. What were your nerves coming down to the finish?
Well, it come down, we needed 1 can of gas, and I needed to get it full because it took so many seconds to dump a can of gas, and I knew how long it took 6 to 7 seconds to dump a can. And I knew Buddy had zero patience. And he had been told me, he said, I've been trying to win this race for 19 years, and I haven't won it yet. And Bobby Allison drafted us, and with Bud Moore Ford. Mm-hmm. So we come down, and I told him I need to get a can of gas in there, buddy. Wait on me. And so when he come in, Buck began to the gas man, he hooked up immediately. Actually, before the car started, best I remember, I put my arm in the windshield and get a hold of the top of his uniform like I'm going to hold him.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll listen and not go. But I got the bike 2004, and I can hear him rail the engine up, and he's going to dump the clutch on it. Well, he did. And Buck stayed to it and come flying down by me. And anyway, we go back on the racetrack, and Buck said, well, I think I got most of it in. Chris Economack and them, they was trying to interview me, find out what happened, and if we're going to make it.
Yeah.
So when he come on the racetrack, we had a 6-second lead on Bobby Allison. And then he stretched it out to 6, 7, 8 seconds. And I said, buddy, you're running way faster than you need to. And he said, come on, he said, I can't hear you. And he just helped that thing wide open. So he come down there, and the caution come out the last lap of the race, and he didn't even pay no attention to that caution.
Damn. Stayed throttle
up.
He
come down there and won the race. But it was one of the greatest wins, I ever had race because of what went into it that winter and all I went through. And then we get in Victor Lane, and Harry Ranier was standing there beside me, and I had never told him about that bill.
Yeah.
And one of the guys walked up to me and said, well, you just competed the fastest 500-mile ever, 188 point whatever it was.
Yep. And
it said, and you've won the most money, $103,000. I said, no, Harry, you've won 93. You owe 10 for that race car.
Imagine, I know this was probably not a big deal back then, but you knew in 1980 that the downsized cars were coming.
Well, we take that same car to Talladega, and it come down to the end of the race again, and your dad was drafting on us.
Yep.
And my tire man, he says, you've got to change 4. I said, I don't want to change. We got in a scramble about that. And finally I give in because I figure if I don't change 4 and something goes wrong, it's my fault.
Yeah.
So I called a 4-tire stop. Earnhardt, your dad come in and changes 2. Well, he's going in turn 1, and we're coming out of turn 4.
Yeah.
Long way, 20-some seconds back. And there was only 20-some laps to go.
Yeah.
And he runs him down. And the crowd gets into it that day. I don't think it's pulling for your dad more than us. They just want to see a race. And he come down then, and I thought Earnhardt was going to wreck him in the dog lane. I said, he ain't going to Earnhardt's not going to let him win this race if he can have it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we ended up winning the race. And we went through Victor Lane, and I'll never forget, we come in the garage, and your dad had Oldsmobile just like we did, and they had them sitting there, so we pulled our car in beside it. And the inspector said, I forget who now, it wasn't Dick Beatty, it's somebody else that's over the garage, said, we're going to find out how you're lowering that race car. And I'm like, lowering the race car? I've heard everything. So anyway, I'm looking at Earnhardt's car there, and I told him, I said, Ray Hill was in charge. And I told Ray, I said, these cars are identical, right? I said, okay, look at my right front fender. It ain't even burnt the paint off of it. Yeah. Look at that one. It's ain't held. Now who's dropping the car?
Yeah.
He looked at me and looked at it, and he never said a word. He just left.
Yeah. I remember the year before that, one of the most spectacular crashes in at least in that era, the late 70s. The Gray Ghost gets loose through the tri-oval, leading the race at Talladega. And it was a spectacular wreck sliding down the front straightaway.
Yeah, backwards.
Yes. Did y'all lose a right rear tire in that deal?
No, it was a trick rear end. It got put in the car.
What? So did the locker come apart in it, or?
I don't know, but I didn't have nothing to do with that. But I remember that's what happened to it.
Yeah. So a trick rear end broke.
I don't know if it broke, but it didn't do what it was
supposed
to do. He's a handful.
Yeah. Well,
I remember he turned to slap around. And he's looking at all the field coming right at him. And when he goes off off the pavement, into the grass, And the exhaust was shoveled all that dirt, put 'em up in, packed it into the intake manifold.
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh no, that destroyed the race car, so you had to rebuild that one.
Yep.